and welcome to my channel. My name is AJ and I'm so excited to finally start making book videos for you. If you're coming here from my bookstagram, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about my 5-star reads, and I'm very picky when it comes to my ratings, so I'm very surprised there's so many on this list. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so we're going to start off with In 5 Years by Rebecca Surley. This book follows Danny, who's a corporate lawyer in New York City who just got engaged, got a promotion, and overall her life is going great. Until one day, she wakes up 5 years in the future with a new man and a new apartment. It's a fantastic story about self-discovery, love, death, heartbreak. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who wants a really sad yet amazing good book. I'm not really sure exactly what else to say about this book just because I loved it so much and there's not really much else I could talk about with it, but I did really enjoy this book. Alright, so we are going to move on to my next 5-star read, which is 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I love 6 of Crows. I've got my shirt that has a reference to one of the lines, which is one of my favorite lines. It says, my ghost won't associate with your ghost. Matthias says that. It's one of my favorites. I also have tattoos. I don't know if you can see them. No mourners, no funerals. 6 of Crows tells the story of Kaz Brecker, a brilliant but ruthless conman with a skilled crew of cutthroats, sneak thieves, and spies at his disposal. Kaz and his team must make their own way in a brutal world, trading in secrets, stealing for their own gain, and never looking back. Kaz and his team are hired to break into the most highly secured prison in the entire world to learn more about what a scientist is doing with Jerdoparam, a special type of drug that enhances the power of Grisha, people who can manipulate elements. It's my all-time favorite book, and I recommend it to anyone who is looking for an amazing fantasy. Now on to the second book. I really liked Crooked Kingdom as well, one of my favorites. This may be a little bit of a spoiler for those of you who haven't read 6 of Crows, but I'm just going to talk about it. So if you don't want to hear anything about Crooked Kingdom, I would skip forward a couple minutes. Kaz Brecker and his crew of deadly outcasts have pulled off a heist so daring they didn't even think they'd survive. But instead of divvying up a fat reward, they're right back to fighting for their lives. Double-crossed and badly weakened, the crew is low on resources, allies, and hopes. Once again, one of my favorite books. I was always on edge while reading this book. Both 6 of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I could read these over and over again if I wanted to and never ever get bored. One of my absolute favorites. With all this Grishaverse talk, I have to mention 6 of Crows because it's still one of my favorites. I got this very special edition. It's so pretty. It's got this amazing picture inside. One of my favorites. I have to mention Shadow and Bone. Even though this book was published in 2012, I feel like the hype for it didn't start until around 2020 or so. It was made into a show recently and it's amazing. The book was obviously better. The book follows Alina Starkov, a teenage orphan who grows up in the Russia-inspired land of Ravka when one day she unexpectedly harnesses a power she never knew she had, becoming a target of intrigue and violence. This was one of many books that got me out of my reading slump. It has a bit of romance in it as well, which was really enjoyable. The plot, the characters, the romance, it was an overall enjoyable book that I would recommend to anyone who loves magic and fantasy. Next, we're going to talk about a book that I recently just finished, and you guys probably know it because you probably bombarded by so many TikToks and YouTube videos about it, but Fourth Wing. Yep. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. It's just, it's such a fantastic story. A young scribe is thrust into an elite war college for dragon riders where the only rule is fly or die. It's an amazing romance, but it's a terrible fantasy. I hate saying it because it was really good and I really did enjoy it. And the reason I rated it 5 stars and not like 4 stars is because Fourth Wing is just such an amazing book, and it's one of those books that I just could not put down at all. I just wanted to sit and read it all day long, and if I let myself, I probably would have finished it in a day. It was just so good. With that being said, I still rated it a 5 stars because of just how much I loved everything that was discussed. The banter between Violet and the other characters just felt so real. It felt like I knew these people. They talked like how actual college students talked, and which in my opinion made me love the book even more. The dragons were amazing and were beautifully described. I felt like I could really see them in my head, which is not common for me because I have a horrible imagination. Definitely something that I would recommend to anyone that I see even browsing at the bookstore where I work at. It's definitely just an amazing book. I highly recommend it. So with this next book, I loved it so much. It's A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. With her father long gone, her mother dying, and her brother constantly underestimating her because of her cerebral palsy, Harper learned to be tough enough to survive. When she tries to save a stranger on the streets of Washington, D.C., she's pulled into a magical world. Break the curse, save the kingdom. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I never really wanted to read retellings. I never had the urge to read them, and it's kind of funny, but I didn't realize it was a retelling until I was about like halfway through the book, and I'm just sitting there and I read something about it and I just was like, oh, it's a retelling. Duh. Felt very silly. I loved the characters, I loved the writing, and I loved the banter. Just an overall amazing book. After all this fantasy talk, now we're going to discuss It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. It Ends With Us is an emotionally raw and powerful novel that explores themes of love, loss, and domestic abuse. The story follows Lily Bloom, a young woman who is determined to break the cycle of abuse that she witnessed as a child. It's such a heartbreaking book, but so good. I read it in one sitting. It was so intriguing that I just couldn't put it down. This is another book that got me out of a deep reading slump. The second book was really, really good, but it definitely was not good as the first. Nothing will top this one. It's just, I definitely will let you know that there is a lot of heavy topics in this book. So I would recommend treading lightly when you read this and have an open mind, because even though there is some heavy topics, it is a really good book. All right, so now on to the last two, which are biographies. Actually, it's really weird. I feel like no one ever actually rates biographies in these videos. First, we're going to talk about Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. Matthew Perry, he played Chandler on Friends, and he did a bunch of other movies in the late 90s, early 2000s. He's a fantastic actor, and I've always loved him. He was always my favorite. It's such a heartbreaking book, though, because he discusses his time on Friends, watching his parents go through a divorce and living with that at such a young age, and unfortunately having to deal with a very bad, deadly alcoholic and drug addiction. And it's very heartbreaking to hear about exactly what happened behind the scenes of Friends. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who really did love Matthew Perry on Friends or any of his other shows or movies. I definitely would recommend reading it. Now on to the last book. It's I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. It's basically the same thing kind of like with Matthew Perry, where she unfortunately endured a lot of abuse from her mother during her time as a young actress, and it was just very heartbreaking to hear exactly what was going on because I really looked up to her. She was one of my favorites, and it really, really hurt to see that, you know, her mom could act like that towards her, and I hope she's doing okay. Other than that, that is the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed. All of my socials will be linked down below, as well as my bookstagram, my personal Instagram, and my Goodreads. And if you want to go follow me on there, that would be really cool. And I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you next time. Bye!